Evaluating a portfolio is never just about absolute returns, right? I mean, anyone can get lucky in a raging bull market. To truly evaluate a portfolio manager, we have to rigorously analyze the amount and the precise type of risk they took to achieve those returns. Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're building a comprehensive framework for 3 risk-adjusted metrics you absolutely need to master for the CIPM program. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with risk-adjusted performance, dive into the Sharpe Ratio, then the Treynor Ratio, followed by the Information Ratio, and finally, we'll wrap up by comparing all 3. All right, Section 1, Risk-Adjusted Performance Measurement. So you probably already know that returns alone really don't tell the whole story. A portfolio manager could be posting massive absolute returns, but the real question is, are they actually compensating investors for the specific risks they're taking? If 2 portfolios give you the exact same return, the academically superior one is the one that got there by systematically taking on less risk. That's your job as an analyst, right? Using these measures to quantify that exact efficiency. Moving on to Section 2, the Sharpe Ratio. Think of the Sharpe Ratio as your baseline. You calculate it by taking the portfolio's return, subtracting the risk-free rate, and then dividing all of that by the portfolio's standard deviation. That numerator is your excess return, what you earned strictly above a risk-free investment, like a T-bill, that has virtually zero default risk. By dividing that excess return by our risk metric, you see exactly how much excess return you're getting for each individual unit of risk taken. Now, standard deviation is our denominator here, and it captures total risk. It looks at how widely returns fluctuate around their average value. But, and this is a big caveat, it treats all volatility as risk. It literally penalizes a manager for a huge unexpected gain just as much as a massive loss. And honestly, when was the last time a client complained about upside volatility? Pretty much never. So calculating this is just a quick, straightforward 3-step process. First, find your excess return by subtracting the risk-free rate from the portfolio return. Second, measure your total risk using standard deviation. And third, simply divide that excess return by the standard deviation. The number you get tells you the return generated for every single unit of total risk. Higher Sharpe Ratio, better risk-adjusted performance. Simple as that. Let's put this into perspective. Imagine Portfolio A cranks out at 12% return, but it's wildly volatile. Then you have Portfolio B, doing a solid 10%, but with a nice, smooth, steady climb. A novice is just going to chase that 12% for sure. But as you know, Portfolio B is likely going to possess a higher Sharpe Ratio. It's just a far more efficient, superior investment overall. Okay, Section 3, the Treynor Ratio. This is where the narrative shifts a bit. While the Sharpe Ratio looks at total volatility, the Treynor Ratio assumes your portfolio is already well diversified. It basically assumes you've built an umbrella to shield against company-specific, unsystematic risks. So it strips those away entirely and isolates only the unavoidable market-wide stuff, the systematic risk. Because we're strictly focusing on market-wide risk now, the formula swaps out the denominator. We keep the exact same excess return in the numerator, so portfolio return minus the risk-free rate, but this time we divide it by the portfolio's beta instead of standard deviation. So what's beta again? It's our measure of systematic risk. It captures how sensitive a portfolio is to overall market movements. Macroeconomic shifts, interest rate changes, the whole shebang. A beta of exactly 1 means it dances perfectly in step with the market. Greater than 1? It's a bumpier, more volatile ride. Below 1, it's a bit more insulated. The calculation steps here are pretty much identical to the Sharpe Ratio, just swapping out that risk variable. 1, calculate excess return. 2, identify your beta. 3, divide. This ratio answers a really specific question. How much excess return did this manager generate specifically for the market risk they exposed us to? A higher Treynor means they did a phenomenal job relative to broad market movements. Next up, Section 4, the Information Ratio. Now, with the Information Ratio, we are pivoting entirely away from absolute market risk. We are zooming in on a manager's active skill against a designated benchmark. We want to know, were their stock picks or market timing actually efficient? We figure this out by dividing active return by tracking error. Let's break that down real quick. The numerator, active return, is just the mathematical difference between what the manager returned and what the benchmark returned. Say they got 11% and the benchmark got 8%, your active return is 3%. The denominator is tracking error, which is also known as active risk. This measures how wildly the portfolio deviated from the benchmark to snag that extra return. lots of frequent, drastic divergences, you're definitely going to see a higher tracking error. Let's look at a practical scenario here. Manager A and Manager B both hit a 4% outperformance, so the exact same active return, but Manager A takes these massive, wild active positions, leading to huge benchmark deviations and a really high tracking error. Manager B achieves that exact same 4%, but stays much closer to the benchmark. Since Manager B secured the exact same excess value while taking way less active risk, their information ratio is going to be higher. They are just proving superior operational efficiency. Finally, Section 5, comparing the three ratios. Here's how it all comes together in one nice little matrix. All three of these metrics evaluate efficiency by dividing a return by a risk, right? But look at how swapping that denominator completely changes what we're actually analyzing. Sharpe and Treynor use excess return over the risk-free rate, dividing by standard deviation and beta. The information ratio swaps both, looking at active return over a benchmark divided by tracking error. Understanding these structural differences is an absolute game changer for knowing when to use what. You've got to use Sharpe for individual or incompletely diversified portfolios, where you really care about total volatility. You want Treynor for large, well-diversified institutional portfolios, where that unsystematic risk is essentially completely diversified away. And you definitely need the information ratio when you're judging an active manager's specific skill at generating consistent benchmark outperformance. Together, these measures are basically your specialized toolkit. Standard deviation, beta, and tracking error, they all measure vastly different dimensions of risk, which leaves us with a pretty important question to consider. If absolute returns never tell the complete story, can you ever truly evaluate a manager's skill without viewing their performance through all three of these distinct lenses? Think about it. Combining them is how you make deeply informed decisions.